Well, hello, Endow Women. I'm very, very happy today to talk to one of my heroes. I'll just say it out loud. Dr. Cuddeback, who is a professor of philosophy at Christendom College, which is, I didn't go there for the undergrad, but I went there for the graduate school and was very upset that I never got to take one of Dr. Cuddeback's classes. But Professor, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be with you. Thanks, Simone.
And, I thought to ask you onto the YouTube channel and podcast because August is Friendship Month. I guess it's National Friendship Day and International Friendship Day. And so at Endow, we are celebrating friendship because part of Endow's mission is actually growing in the love and knowledge of Christ in community, in friendship. What better way to study philosophy and theology and the teachings and writings of the saints in the church if not with a group of friends.
Indeed.
So I thought, who would I want to talk to about this? That's you. So thank you so much for
thank you.
being here. So, friendship, it's so crucial. I think this is my, obviously if I'm speaking, it's my opinion, but I don't think we do friendship well anymore, Professor. Do you agree?
I do agree. On the whole, the report card is a pretty negative one. But it might be reasonable to start by giving ourselves a little bit of an excuse there, or in a sense, self-understanding, because it's so hard. I like following one of the authors I really enjoy. He emphasizes the term context a lot. And he says life needs a good context in which to thrive. This is such a simple point. I'm a gardener and I love thinking about, there's so many great analogies between life and a garden. And I think a lot also about a household and raising children. We want to be doing all we can to be getting good contexts for life. And a key part of life is friendship. And so we want to have good context for friendship. And this is one of the ways we can understand the problem that we have now. So many of the best natural contexts historically in which friendship can grow have been removed. And so that's just part of understanding why it's difficult for us to grow in friendship, because friendship takes more than just, and this in itself already is a big thing, finding the right people.
Right.
But just having the right people is not yet enough, because you have to have a context in which to have that friendship grow.
Yes.
Not to mention, another theme I love, you have to have some sense of how to grow it. And that's why I like studying friendship and talking about friendship, because if nothing else, at least we can get a clearer sense of what it is that we're after in how to go about trying to grow it.
Okay, so this is what you have to teach us today. I mean, Professor, my family is, I'm a first generation American. So when I hear stories of my parents living in Cairo, all the Christians lived in about 2 to 3 neighborhoods, districts in Cairo. So the context was pretty nice. Everybody's there together. But the way, when I listened to one of my parents' stories, not only were they always together, and so like loneliness was not a thing, but the truth that they spoke to in each other's lives, this concept of like being supportive or being offended, these are concepts that my parents have learned in the United States in an American context that are foreign to them. Yeah. Because in their mind, friendship is really so much grounded in reality and truth and speaking truth to someone's life. So me as an American, I'm like, Mom, Dad, I mean, that goes into parenting too, which for sure has nothing to do with friendship, it has to do with raising decent children. But when you say context, I immediately think about the culture. Yeah. The first thing is, we have this crisis of friendship. I think you're right, because we don't, the context, what context? So tell us, what is it we're after and how do we get there? Because we're lonely. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had about this. So
Yeah, these are very tough, and I mean, just a couple different aspects of contexts, right? There's part of the negative context is thought patterns that we have, right? And even I'm going to have throughout in mind that particularly our audience is women, and there's the culture right now is very negative for men and for women, each in different ways, the messages that are being given to us. And so just the kind of channels that we tend to be pushed in, and then the ways that we tend to think about ourselves and think about what success is. I mean, all of these things in general tend to be antithetical to friendship, because we tend to be being pushed towards success conceived not on the model of just fundamentally living a good life in good relationships, right? With all these other things are given priority. So we're jet set and we're out there pursuing this profession, and we're traveling here, and we're pursuing all these degrees and on and on. And so we tend to be moving all the time, and we tend not to be settling into contexts where then you just be able to go deeper. I mean, I'm going to say something that's a little bit scary, and thinking, well, how are we going to get ourselves out of this one? Well, we have to at least have a little bit of a clearer sense of what the problem is. I think one of the biggest aspects of the way that friendship is undermined, again, there's several, is just the fact that we move around so much. I mean, all of the masters of friendship are very clear. It takes time. It really, really takes time to get to know another person. And it takes not just time, but time actually doing things together, right? And that's, again, you come back to the context. If you're living in the same neighborhoods together consistently, you at least have a possibility of really getting to know one another. And so you might think, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? And particularly young women today are, there's any number of things that tend to make us have to move here or there, and right, and that might not be able to change. But how about if we just start with a couple things of, in any case, starting to think of putting more of a priority on relationships and being more intentional about them. This is something that's very much in our power, and it already does a lot just to say, I'm going to be aware of the truth that for me to become the person that I should be, I really do need to have a couple, in any case, of good friends.
Yeah.
So let me do this, and I know we're doing something big, so pardon me if I move around a little bit,
Not
but
at
one of
all.
the things that one needs to do when talking about friendship is distinguish between different kinds of friendship.
Yes.
Right? So in this is more subtle sometimes than people realize. It's not just the difference between good and bad friendships. It's not the difference. I mean, there's the very helpful distinction in Aristotle between the friendship of pleasure, the friendship of utility, and true friendship or virtuous friendship. That's a very helpful distinction. But even there, that's not necessarily the whole show, because then even among the truer or virtuous friendships, there's ones that are really able to go deeper versus the ones that are not. And then you also have friendship within your family, with neighbors that don't necessarily cleanly go into one of those three.
Yeah.
What I want to say this is, one of the first things to try to do is to recognize this truth. I'm going to have different friendships with the different kinds of people that are in my life. If I'm an adult young lady, then I can be thinking about how to have a certain kind of friendship with my parents. I can be thinking then in a different vein of, and ultimately the one probably that we're really going to focus on is my peers. And then there's going to be the circles. I like to kind of put, there's circles of intimacy. There might be some out and a farther circle where, hey, I've got a real relationship with them. We really mean something to one another. We keep in touch with one another. This isn't just a friendship of utility where we just happen to help one another do things. This isn't just a friendship of pleasure where the basis of the relationship is just that we enjoy being together. There is a deeper connection that we have here, but we don't have occasion or context to go deeper.
Mhm.
And so it's going to stay on the outer circle and be something real, but only so central a part of my life. Then when we come in closer, it's are there, so I mean, this to just get very concrete, the main thing I would like someone to take away from this is to look at my life and to ask, are there 2 to 3 people or even one
Mhm.
that I can really be developing that friendship in the full sense of which the masters, whether pagan Aristotle or Christian, St.
Yeah.
Thomas Aquinas and St. Alarid speak, where it's really 2 people seeking to share one life, building one another up in virtue, having deep conversations, sharing our souls with one another, side by side in pursuing the great things of life. That is where life is most going to be lived. Those are the ones that most take cultivation and the most discernment.
Yes.
How
Yes.
about that for starters?
That's fantastic. I want to say, as somebody who lives in Southern California, newly back home, when you're talking about that shared experience, this is what I see with Endow Women, with my friends in general, within me. The problem is the way that it's the culture set up, everything is a big deal. We go to the beach, we go to brunch, but that day to day, just sharing simple life experiences is lost. And I think that is where a lot of the intimacy and shared context is happens. That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
missing. Everything
yeah,
has to be an event. Simple
yeah,
life is left out. So I think
yeah,
the lot, so
yeah,
what I'm seeing and the conversations I'm having with Endow Women and others is that
yeah,
we all want what you're saying, exactly the same thing. These 2 or 3, maybe your Endow group, maybe just, your close friends, that you're really sharing life, deep intimacy, what
yeah,
Aristotle would say, cultivating friendships of virtue, helping each other towards the good. But to get to that, to get to those experiences, to have those shared, because so much of that intimacy grows when you have those shared experiences, but those shared experiences aren't there, or if they're only limited to like a field, no, we don't, they're not children's field trip, but like an adult field trip, like
yes,
eating at
yes,
it, something that there's not really opportunities to kind of have those conversations or to have those um, things. So how would
yeah,
you,
yeah,
how, so I think what you're describing is so crucial, and I think our women in particular are there. They have
right.
decided that they, and sometimes the method for getting there is to start an Endow group and
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
find those people there.
yeah, 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 yeah.
um but what, how can you help us, and what if that, you know
I
is,
hear you.
how do we
Yeah,
get to that
yeah,
point?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, Simone, I think you made a really, really, really good point there. I think that was very insightful. Of it just really, really struck me when you were saying, we make a big deal of going here and going there. Being the age that I am, now, of course, I'm around undergrads all the time, and younger people, various sizes and flavors. And one thing I have to be careful of is I mean, times are changing so quickly. There's always a difference between people that are a little older and people that are a little younger.
Yeah.
But we're in a time where things are so unstable and so much in transition that in many ways the difference between generations is bigger than it has been and bigger than it should be. And
Yes.
our experiences become more remote from one another. But so one thing that really struck me is something that I have seen in I just say what I mean, people under whatever 40, that that it is more of a culture of yeah, the way you put it, kind of events,
Mhm.
doing this and doing that, and those events can be they're very important. They can be an okay, even very good in their own way, in their own place, context. But at the same time, by the very nature of it, events are not best suited to being the ongoing context to share life.
Yeah.
And we have to be very realistic here. This is where sometimes people think, okay, well, then what I need to do is I really got to get super radical and go try to do something that's way out of the zone of what we're doing at all, and come up with ideas that in themselves, it might have a lot in the abstract to recommend them, but
Yeah.
concretely are going to be very difficult to do. So we
Yeah.
have to be willing to be creative. I, 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 I I think you're very much right. Something like an endowed group really is a very good response to the current situation, because even if it feels a little bit artificial,
Hmm.
right? I mean, as opposed to the ghetto where your
Right.
family was, there's something that's a little bit contrived about, okay, well, kind of here we are now, let's kind of start being more close to one another here in this room as we start to talk about good things.
Right.
Can feel a bit forced. And right
Exactly.
now, I want to, if I may put it this way, I want to give people permission, like, okay, might feel a little weird, do it.
Yeah.
In other words, this is connected to the aspect of we don't have those contexts that are helping us. We don't have, that wholesome pub where the men at the end of their workday can go and
Exactly.
have a real contact with one another. We don't have the common work in the village,
Mhm.
like my wife's grandmother in Ukraine, where then they would all just be
Exactly.
sewing together, singing together, having stories passed on, and be getting to know one another. These contexts, by and large, are simply not there, and those are the ones that have the greater stability, that have that simple but more rich humanity to them, where you're able to
Yeah.
start to do this kind of thing. So I would say,
Exactly.
look for the simple things, and again, it might be a study group, and then start to be creative, be willing to be um, kind of um, very intentional in reflecting on the things that we're doing together, and ask how we can up the ante. This is a tough one. I have to say this, you know, the undergrads, who are of course behind in years, most to whom we're talking right now and thinking about, they, I think, are even more challenged, where they don't really even have an imagination.
I was just going to make that point, Professor. I was just going to say, keep going, but I was
I
just
believe.
going to
Yeah,
make that
well,
point.
I mean, they can't even really picture what else would you do. They're kind of waiting for a text about the next kind of mob
Yes.
event.
My high school students were the same way. I mean, I would say, hey guys, I might be at the Phoenix Symphony after school, or I mean, the art museum, just hanging out. Maybe I'll bump into you there, just to kind of spark, you know, actually, you would appreciate this very much. Your music and the soul talks, we would
So,
have, that
oh,
is
right,
your talk
right.
on it inspired me to have, we
Oh,
called it
okay, good.
Project Beauty in class, and we would
Right, right,
kind of try, kind of after school, build community based on humane, rich humanity, if you will, like to
right,
use your words.
right,
But in my moral imagination was provoked by my parents' experience.
right,
That was a loss, that I understood that the fact that they had their friends and their family in shared context, shared work, and it was all of the Aristotelian categories. It was virtue, it was poor, so it was utilitarian, and and it was pleasant.
yeah, sure.
So it was all of that all
Yep,
together, of
yep,
course, in a
yep, yep, yep,
post-Soviet
yep.
country. Irony. But
Yes.
when I lived in Virginia, going to the Christendom Graduate School, I rented a room across the street, and Queen of Apostles Parish was across. So I felt like I had a little taste of maybe what my parents had
Right,
experienced before,
right,
and then moving to Phoenix, which is again like everybody's spread out. Um, all of my friends, I think this was an act of a divine mercy on my heart, because I think God knows how much I need community. I mean, every human does, but my girlfriends had all moved to the same apartment building, so we were in the
mhm,
same apartment building in the same floor, and I thought,
yep,
I was like, whole. So we talk about those days, like the good old days, because that was when we had shared living space, shared context, shared
yep,
experiences.
yep,
But that's that's so uncommon. But you're right
right,
with the imagination. There has to be an experience, a taste of the beauty of community, and the beauty of shared life, and the beauty of these things, to even know that it's something that can happen. So the reason my students, and maybe yours, don't know what to do with themselves is because their imaginations haven't even been
yes,
provoked.
right,
So
right. Well, I full agreement. Let me throw out a suggestion. Let's speak young ladies, taking young even broadly, um, tend to live together, which as is fitting, in small groups, kind of the classic several ladies rooming together. Let's talk about that for a minute. That's not a mode of living that has a whole lot of historical precedent,
Mm.
and but it's certainly something that is done now and is fitting. And so I'd say we need to adjust and learn how to do it well. So
Hmm.
just a couple quick thoughts. Obviously, to the best that we can, be intentional about getting a group of like mind. And I think by and large, ladies tend to be pretty good at doing that, right? The kind of screening process, and get ways of, on this list or whatever you find. And then how about some intentional living there in the household? Maybe in the household, there's another lady or two with whom you're really going to be able to go deeper in friendship. But just a quick thought here, a little bit of a sidebar going over to another theme I love, that of household, because I think this might be helpful in any case, is that's not a household in the normal, rich, natural, full sense of a household. But nonetheless, I'd say it's a place where women can together exercise their genius of making a home that has a certain real hominess to it, a certain richness, to make this a place where people and relationships come first.
Yes.
And I would now, there's this aspect of, I know with young ladies as with young men, there's often a big question mark kind of in the background is, well, am I in a hunt to get married right now? Kind of where does that stand? What am I thinking about that? And that can be a point of pressure and confusion. Am I directly preparing for marriage? Well, I mean, but here I'm preparing for it, but that doesn't mean it's right around the corner. So what do I do? Sometimes that can also put a pressure on, if I would rather be ultimately in a household where I'm the wife and mother, how do I think about this household
Hmm.
where I'm not a wife and mother? And so it's not perhaps what I would have been looking for. I'd say, um, in humility and courage, we live where we are. All of us have to learn at the various times of our life to do this. I always say to young men, one of the hardest times of my life was the several years in between college and when I did get married, when I didn't know which way I was going to go. When I feel like the Lord was consistently saying to me, you don't need to know that right now.
Yeah.
You need to try to live a good life right now.
Yes.
Live in relationship with me, develop the relationships that you have. Let's work. What you can always directly work on is your friendships with other young ladies, right? Relationships with men have a whole set of problems their own, which raises vocational issues and so forth. Let's just set that all over there for a moment. Let's work, because this is key in whatever your vocation is as a lady, as a woman, is to be able to have rich relationships with other women,
Yes.
where you have a kind of a unique kind of meeting of the minds. You're able to share your genius with one another. If you're living in the same household together, you can be sharing that kind of genius, that calling together, to make this household of ladies a place that has a lot of the real characteristics that women are the key to giving to those other kinds of households. Let's make it a place of hospitality. Let's make it a place of peace. Let's make it a place of presence, and start to do the kinds of activities. We're going to be listening to good music together. We're going to be reading a Shakespeare play together. We're going to be reading scripture together. Sure, we're going to have a movie night, and then we're going to have a discussion together. The things that have a certain stability, that have a certain richness, these are the contexts. These are the contexts for a richness of a kind of household life right there.
Right.
And they're the ways that if with some of those other ladies, we really do have a meeting of souls, and that is where it can be lived out.
It's so, what you're saying is so, so beautiful. And even amongst, and I really hope that this is, I mean, I'm sure it will be fruitful for anybody listening, but the amount of, when you're addressing the, okay, my kind of like the vocational tension of like, what is the meaning of this household, this in between spot, But like you said, everything, God is calling you to his will and to bring him glory in every context. And it's not wasted time, but also to live that time well, you have to make sacrifices so it's not just like a place where you hang out before you get married or go off to religious community.
Right.
It's actually
Right.
a crucial part of preparation for your vocation, which is part of your vocation. And you need to make it beautiful
Yeah.
to fully enjoy it and to grow as a human being. So I just love all the ideas and proposals and imaginative inspirations you put in there, because I have always, for probably my own neediness, have always seen the value and necessity for community, but who have been confronted by women who in the past have said, like, no, I'm on the husband hunt track, and if I give myself to community, I'm somehow going to be deprived of a state in life. And
Right.
that's exactly
Yep.
the opposite, I would say.
Right.
uh,
Right. Yeah.
it's not a threat. It's not a threat to your
No. Right. And here's the thing. Part of the thing, I'm going to go St. Alred here. I love his book, Spiritual Friendship. It is so practical
I love it too.
about the period of discernment, where you're getting to know discernment here as it regards friendship, as getting to know a person as to whether it's going to work to go deeper. And some people see some of the things that he says here as perhaps being overly judgmental. But St. Albert absolutely is saying to you, sometimes you're going to judge, at least at this point in time, this person is not the kind of person with whom I can go deeper. I mean, so, I mean, you bring up that, there are, I assure you, it's the same way with young men. I mean, and if a guy is just pretty much, on the prowl, it's like, that's where he is. And we're not going to be able to go real deep here. And again, it doesn't mean that I can have no relationship with that person. It doesn't mean that we drop the iron curtain of, well, I have nothing to do with you and yours. So I mean, in the great art of living,
Yeah.
we have to be able to be generous and present to people according to the reasonable status of the relationship. And that might be a roommate or two that right now I'm living with. It would be great if at least there's then a roommate or two with whom you can pursue these deeper, these richer things. Because again, friendship, real friendship, is shared rich life. If there's not rich life to share, then there might be friendship in some sense of the term, but it's not the real thing that we're looking for.
Yeah.
So you have to be cultivating rich life. When you're cultivating rich life, you are cultivating friendship, because you're cultivating the type of thing that you can then share with someone, even if you're not sharing it with that person
Yes.
yet.
Yes, I do. I just love that, the sharing rich life with, and my dreams and visions. And this is, again, like, I'm so inspired by the endowed women that I am honored to accompany, because, for example, one woman said, one of the benefits of the quarantine has been that, people were joking, like, why even buy a planner? And she bought a planner to carve in intentional time for spiritual, intellectual growth through her endowed study, through her friendships. And that was something she was taking so seriously, because the whole experience really impressed in her mind that if I'm going to have a rich life, this has to be a priority, which means it has to be intentional, which means I need to carve out the space and the time for it. Our culture, Professor, as you know, says the exact opposite of everything. Is all about success, is all about money, and it's all about all the events I can pile up, all the experiences, but no judgments behind those experiences that, like, that. So I appreciate so much everything you're saying, and I'm hoping that there are more and more women who are going to be listening to this, and I actually love the men who listen to it too. So thanks for listening, men. That the Endow group, because I think the Holy Spirit does what the Holy Spirit wants, and sometimes you have this, like, beautiful encounter with somebody in an Endow group that is that mutuality that you and Sam begin, because you can't fabricate that. Like, you can't.
Right.
It's a gift when it happens, and I pray for that to continue to happen, and and that also these would be missionary gestures where we're proposing to an increasingly pagan world, here is a place of belonging, community, a friendship, of shared rich living in humanity that somebody can perceive and step into and say, this
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
what I am
Yeah.
looking for and what I want.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. No, amen. A very beautiful point of just the fruit of rich shared life is it's always calling out to others to come and share in it too. Absolutely. Um,
so
I have
you had part two. Was there a part two? I mean, there's again so
oh,
much.
that's part. There's part 3 and 4. How about a couple suggestions? Again, you drive, but I have a quick thought on just a couple things just to extrapolate a little bit, maybe get a little more specific. So we're talking about context. Remember, great point from Aristotle. True friendship is most of all lived in good conversations. And so I'm just really going to encourage you to think in terms of what does it take to cultivate my ability to have a good conversation. And I mean, in a sense, it sounds so simple, kind of, okay, well, kind of there it is. What am I supposed to do with that? But no, really enter into this. I like to say to my students, think about this. How often do you really have a good conversation? How often do you really get into a conversation where you feel like, wow, this person is really with me. This person is really interested. This person is really willing to make himself vulnerable. There's so much that goes into being able to do it well. I want us to just be intentional about again seeking the context, but then the habits of actually doing it. A couple of simple things that I like to suggest. I when I think of this, when I'm with my own friends, when I'm with my wife at times, I realize, oh yeah, that's right. I've been talking about myself for a long time now. I mean, how often I'm embarrassed to remember that myself, or I'm talking to people that I wish would simply have the revelation of, do you realize you haven't asked me how I'm doing uh, in our whole, lunch so far, or
So practical. I
or
love
whatever. So to learn to listen, to learn to be, I love to say it's an old thing. The best way to start a conversation is to listen. I mean, and it is just true. So and we can, with his roommates, the people that we know well. I mean, literally, not being too phony about it. I mean to practice this, of okay, we try to get to know one another's stories. But here's the thing. But the better conversations, the richest conversations are ultimately, as a Dietrich von Hildebrand, are not the ones that are just talking about one another, but where you turn together and you look upwards together. So that's why studying is so important. Also, to give us something out there to concentrate on. And that's why a reading group can be very fitting, or listening to the great piece of music, something that we can pursue together out there and have a sustained conversation about. This takes practice. This takes habits. So to be doing all that we can to be scheduling that into our day, to thinking with whom that we can do that is a big part of just kind of the in the trenches growing a friendship.
Oh, I love that. I just love that so much, because the intentionality that it takes
It does.
to become yourself, and to
Yes, yes.
yourself, the intentionality that it takes. I mean, it's just, Father Giussani, I would talk about, are you living reality intensely? And when you were speaking, I thought, what is more intense than having this attentiveness to God and this attentiveness to reality, where you say, yes, in every moment, let me be intentional. Let me see what is really happening in reality, and make
Hmm.
space for it. And I think we have to be silent. Our culture's so loud and so busy, and they're just, and we're all such people pleasers these days. I struggle with that. And
Right,
to say no to all the things, to
right,
gamble on the rich humanity that I actually crave and need and am made for.
right.
Wow,
Yes, yes, yes.
that's not really marketable, but that's what we do.
Right, right, right.
That's what
I
we,
like that. Gamble on rich humanity.
yeah.
That's a good.
The distractions are so much easier, you know?
No, no, I mean, no, you're right. Let's cast our lot. Cast our lot with the rich reality, and we are thinking the same way here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is such a great conversation. I'll have to ask you to come back just because there's so many other things we could talk about and all of that. But I'm so inspired by you, Professor, and I love what you're doing with and I know you have a new thing to offer, which I want to ask you about, but I love what you've done in the past and hopefully you'll do in the future again with the Bethany weekend.
Hmm.
And now you have and endow, we talk about the feminine genius a lot, but we're also worried about the masculine genius as well. So if you could please share with us kind of the projects you're working on, and they're very inspiring to me. So I just want our listeners to have a chance to hear about them from you.
Well, thanks. I mean, Lifecraft is it used to be Bacon from Acorns. Lifecraft is my website where there's a few just kind of main themes that have basically grown out of years of teaching. One is stewardship, one is good work, one is friendship, and the other one that I particularly though I'm focusing on now is man of the household. And I teach the co-ed institution, of course, but and I love working with the young ladies. But I have a special place in my heart for it's hard to say which our culture is harder on,
Yeah.
masculinity or femininity. But in certain ways, I almost feel now, especially in the church, there is a lot of work specifically to kind of bring out that great aspect in St. John Paul II of the feminine genius and St. Edith Stein. And there's a lot of great work being done on that. Is so utterly necessary to help women to understand the amazing gift that it is to be a woman. And my particular focus right now is to help men to understand what an amazing gift it is to be a man and not to be afraid to step up and to step into that role, even though there's so much misunderstanding. So it's going to take some intellectual formation to help men to understand what real manliness is and this fundamental context of a man in a household. So my real love and hope and goal there is I see so many young husbands and fathers where now whatever they were doing 5 years ago, they're starting to realize, wow, I mean, I have this woman that I love, perhaps I've been blessed with a child or two, and I know I want to do something really good here, but I just don't know. I have a vague sense of what I want, but I can't, again, really picture it in specificity. So how do I do this? What is my role? How do I pursue it? I've formed this course that I give now online and is available to be taken online, just called Man of the Household, where I go through the basic principles to help understand what is a household, first of all, because again, that's something many of us have a real trouble picturing, this thing that most natural. I mean, what paths have we come to where what a household is hard to conceive,
Yes.
right? And then man as a husband, man as a father, and then man as learning how to work, both in a profession out there, but still to be very present at home through his work and involved with the children and leisure in the home and the different how to deal with technology in the home. So these are the issues that are so close to my heart because it's the life of so many young adults, of course, going to be called to be forming these households. And then it's of course where the next generation is always from, right? Having a household of a certain kind. So that's that project. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. I want to I want to peek in and see what's going on in that course, but I will spread the word about that, and I'm sure all the women
Thank you.
listening have men in their life that they can and children and sons and all that they can share it with. So definitely get the word on that. But I just feel like you read my mind because I've been having some conversations with the Endow team and his staff and just saying like, we talk about the feminine genius so much, but we're like, what about the masculine genius? What's out there for them? And then I saw your course and thought, oh, this is great. He's on top of it. Someone's looking out for them. And that's beautiful spiritual fatherhood. So thank you so much.
Well,
Dr.
thank you for the encouragement. Thank you very much. And God bless your wonderful work. I'm glad to learn more about it. And I really do hope that we can do some more together. But all of the efforts and the ladies will be in my prayers. We're all on the same team, and
Yeah.
we're looking to discover the gift and to live it. And I love to say to my students, the reality is always better than we've yet realized. And
Ooh,
so even in these tough times, the gift of what it means to be human and what we can do by the grace of God now is better than we've realized. So let's strive for it together by the grace of God.
amen. On that note, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.